Free will is not the opposite of material determinism. Many people assume that having free will must conflict with a materially deterministic universe. However, the concept of free will does not, and does not need to, intersect directly with the fundamental laws of physics. Instead, it arises at a higher, more abstract level of reality, namely, our subjective experience or psychological layer. At the base layer, the universe might well be a sea of particles and fields governed by deterministic or probabilistic laws. No color, no meaning, just pure information exchange. But from that foundational substrate, reality ascends in layers, forming increasingly complex aggregates. By the time we reach the nth layer, the human mind emerges with its own internal rules, symbols, and models. Free will is defined in this mental space, an idea that the mind uses to make sense of choices and actions in everyday life. Hierarchy of abstraction. Imagine each layer as a structured map that perfectly corresponds to the layer below it, but interprets and represents data differently. Base layer. Photons, quarks, discrete information. No inherent meaning here, just raw mechanics or probabilities. Higher layers. Chemical processes, biology, neural activity, culminating in the complex mental representations we call thoughts, emotions, intentions, and so forth. In this topmost layer, your mind constructs a self-model, your subjective impression of who you are and how you act. This self-model interacts with a simplified version of the environment, using concepts like color, sound, desire, intention, etc. Free will arises here. It's the notion that you, the self, weigh various options and pick one, not a violation of physics. This sense of free will does not contradict deterministic or even probabilistic physics at the base layer. It doesn't require overriding physical laws or upending cause and effect. Instead, it means that at our human scale, and within our mind's self-model, we genuinely perceive ourselves choosing among alternatives. That interior sense of choice is real for us in the higher abstraction layer, but it does not break any underlying laws at the physical layer. If you imagine a computer program simulating a virtual environment, the characters within it can appear to make decisions. That doesn't mean they're defying the hardware's deterministic instructions. It's simply that at the code or game level, these behaviors and decisions are recognized as choices. Something similar occurs with human beings. We have an internal model that acknowledges options and intentions, while the deeper reality can remain mechanistic or uncertain if you factor in quantum mechanics. Why doubts about free will arise? Faulty self-model. If you discover your actions differ from how you believe you'd act, you might wonder whether you truly chose at all. Perhaps your model of who you are is incomplete. Lack of updates. Sometimes your self-model doesn't keep pace with new experiences and learning. This mismatch can create the illusion that you didn't decide, or that forces beyond you directed your behavior. Unconscious influence. Evolution has wired certain reflexes or biases into our subconscious, which can override conscious intentions at times. If your deeper mind steers you in a direction your conscious mind didn't anticipate, you'll feel as though your free will was absent. In reality, your entire mind, conscious plus unconscious, is part of you, but your conscious self-model only acknowledges a fraction of that process. Illustrative example. A salesman's trick. From a manipulative salesman's perspective, he might see a customer as having no free will. He's using persuasive techniques to nudge or trick them. But from the customer's own viewpoint, they feel they have made the purchase willingly. Their self-model aligns with that action. Both viewpoints can be simultaneously valid. The salesman sees external manipulation, while the customer experiences a cohesive personal choice. No paradox arises because each perspective focuses on a different abstraction layer. Conclusion. Coexisting layers of explanation. Free will can be both real in our subjective experience and fully consistent with a deterministic or probabilistic material world. One layer, physics, describes raw cause and effect. Another layer, mind, describes an agent making decisions. As long as we realize that free will is part of the mind's modeling system, existing in the world of meaning, choice, and experience, we see that it need not contradict the more fundamental layer of particles and equations. In other words, you can be a physically determined organism and still have a genuine sense of responsibility and choice. Free will is the internal narrative of navigating life's branching paths. It matters deeply at our psychological level, even if at a more fundamental scale everything proceeds by the mechanisms of nature, mechanisms that your mind cannot override, but can interpret in the language of decisions and experiences.